Welcome to the stream. Thank you for being here today. We have a very special guest. I have Cathy Higgins from Stand Up to Cancer, the title Head of Science Programs. Cathy, uh, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for including me.
I'm so glad we get to talk today. I guess I'll just start with what uh tell us about who you are and what your role is with Stand Up to Cancer.
Sure, I'm Senior Vice President of Science Programs at Stand Up to Cancer. I started with Stand Up to Cancer a little over a decade ago. And when I first came on, I was working with researchers and through the selection process too, and donors to one of our specific grant programs. And across time, I've inherited the entire science portfolio. And so work with our president and CEO on strategy around science and also with our scientific advisory committee, hearing from them where they think we should be focusing on our science and how to focus the dollars that you and others help us raise for research in cancer.
That's incredible. Uh that really just I've always wondered, and I know when we do these live events, people ask how is it determined what research gets supported, or how does the money get used specifically when these donations come through. And I'm so glad we can have someone that can speak a little more to that. Uh, as far as your background goes, before we get too much into the stand up to cancer specific questions, um, could you tell me a little bit more about your general background?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm from Virginia. I have lived in rural Virginia most of my life and now live just outside of Richmond. Um, I went to a specialty high school that was focused on science, math, and technology. I was very fortunate to be able to do that half a day. And then I was at the local high school the other half of the day, where I really loved band and that really was my family in high school. And so I had that mix of interests between both science and music.
Mm.
Then in college, I went to William and Mary and ended up with a chemistry degree. And my focus there was in polymer chemistry. And the lab I worked in was interested in the pipes that are in oil wells and how long they can stay in the ocean floor before they start to degrade.
Mm.
Then I went to Tulane University for my PhD. In between, I taught 1 year of high school chemistry. At Tulane, I was looking at proteins and how they fold and unfold and how stable they are. And then next, I really wanted to work with human samples and on human research because I'd started with polymers, went to proteins, and then how do I blend my work into more meaningful human aspects?
Mm.
And so I went to Baylor College of Medicine in Houston for my postdoc and I worked on atherosclerosis, so that hardening of the arteries, the carotid arteries. What's the biochemistry around that? And how can we look at that in ways that don't involve as much surgery? Or what can we do to cover stents that help resolve some of that? And then over time, I went into research development in the Texas Medical Center in Houston. I went into research compliance at a Research One university. And then, because of the network I had built, I was connected to Stand Up to Cancer.
Mm.
And so, across the path, I had been in so many different parts of research that it really was a great step to be able to have impact with patients and cancer. Back when I was in the Texas Medical Center, we had worked on the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute of Texas. Texans voted to put forward $3 billion across 10 years in cancer research. And so I was fortunate to work with researchers in Texas on some programs there. And so because I'd already worked in cancer research and then had background in lots of different aspects of science, it was a really good fit to be able to come into stand up and use the skills I'd gained to try to build programs that made sense for pushing the field forward.
Mm.
And so that's my background and how I ended up at stand up.
That's an incredible story. I love how you outlined the steps so well in terms of like how you got from one place to another, and then you found yourself here, which answered one of my next questions, which was how did you find yourself at Stand Up to Cancer? And that, I think I love that you said something that was really great. Like how can I work in the human factor? How can I take that into account? Like what is some work that I could do that that affects people? And I think that's a big part of what you all do there. And it's about the people affected by cancer. Uh, one of the questions I have is what is one of the biggest things one of the biggest questions researchers are trying to answer about cancer right now?
I think that one of the areas we're particularly interested in is one, early detection of recurrence and also early detection of cancer in general.
Hmm.
Because if we can find it earlier, the treatments aren't as aggressive for patients. And the treatments can also be more curative for patients if the cancer is caught early stage.
Hmm.
So that's one of our keen interests. And of course, there are many others across different cancer types where researchers are eluded in some ways in how to conquer them. So some of those areas where standards of care aren't available yet, we're really interested in helping researchers figure out how to tackle those very hard to treat cancers.
Hmm. Yeah, we do talk about that quite a bit when we do these live streams, talking to the chat about like the catching it earlier tends to, of course, is much better scenario for many reasons. And I'm glad that that is one of the things that you aim the researchers at, or you in terms of rather focusing on with the research teams. um I think that's a great thing to like remind people of, and we definitely talk about that quite a bit during some of our streams.
Mm.
Um, as kind of a like a connected question to that, how has like our understanding of cancer changed within the last 10 years? How has that our understanding evolved?
I think that we're figuring out ways to manage the fact that cancer can morph and change. And so researchers are thinking ahead.
Mm,
The cancer did this, and then what's it going to do in response to that therapy? They're becoming more personalized in their approach. And the clinical trials that are happening are not always small progress or very, very small step progress. They're very large progress.
hmm.
For instance, we've had three breakthroughs at Stand Up to Cancer in the last several years that we have helped support. And just so you know, research is expensive. And so
Hmm.
Stand Up to Cancer will fund dream teams. Most always, the researchers have more funds coming to them. So there are other entities funding their work as well so that they have enough to move their work forward. And we've been very fortunate to be part of three major breakthroughs over the last several years. One of them was in rectal cancer, where the researchers very boldly decided that rather than taking patients into surgery, which causes them to have for rectal cancer a difficult quality of life afterwards, that they would move up an immunotherapy first
Mm,
to figure out if a subset of patients that they had identified they thought would respond to immunotherapy would respond with that being the first treatment rather than a down the road treatment.
hmm.
And they found 100% response rate,
Wow.
which is absolutely remarkable in clinical trials. And so that made a huge impact for some very young people who joined the trial, lots of ages, but
Hmm.
where they had cancers that were a very specific subtype, but that makes a big impact for those patients. Then they expanded into other cancer types, not all at 100% success rate, but all high percent rate, which helps, again, more patients in different cancer types. Another was in soft tissue sarcomas. So one of the grants we funded was for an immunotherapy plus radiation, which was a new combination.
Mm,
And it turned out to be a new standard of care that hadn't happened across several decades. It had been over 30 years since
wow.
there had been a new standard of care for those patients. In another project, we were involved in helping with a therapeutic cancer vaccine. So I know vaccines, it's difficult to understand what's going on with them.
Hmm.
In the case here, these are patients who had late stage pancreatic cancer. They're looking at a very poor prognosis. They're looking at how many months, weeks they'll survive. And so the approach was to do surgery, remove cancer, and then apply a personalized vaccine for them. And they had a 50% response rate. And
Wow.
some of the patients have continued to live 6, 7 years beyond the vaccine. So we're seeing a lot of exciting new insights and a lot of ways that researchers are thinking outside the box and
Hmm.
strategically about how to approach different thoughts around defeating cancer.
That's incredible. And thank you for sharing those examples. That I love to hear these stories of like how this work directly impacts those patients. And like you said, in some cases it made all the difference. Like you said,
Yes.
they respond people respond really well to the treatment. They do a lot better. Uh I love to hear that. And I didn't realize that that there were three breakthroughs in particular that you can speak to. That's great. And I
Over the last, those are all over the last 5, 6 years.
that's amazing.
And so we've had a good number of breakthroughs out of our portfolio and also work that we may not call breakthrough, but it sets the stage
Hmm.
for researchers to have a data sharing infrastructure or ways to connect and relate with one another that didn't exist previously. Because if we think about it, historically, researchers have received their money in single labs. And so part of what the Stand Up to Cancer model did was build large scale teams.
Mm,
Because if you think about a movie, it's not one person or 5 people who put
yeah.
together a movie usually. It's a large team with lots of people involved. And the women who were involved in Stand Up to Cancer realized if it takes us massive teams to put out a movie, and
Hmm.
cancer is extraordinarily complicated too, it would be so much better bringing together large scale teams to try to figure out what's going on. And so that's the reason the first grant mechanism and model out of Stand Up was what we call a dream team.
Mm,
And from there, we've developed more grant mechanisms, all that supplement and rely on and feed off of really that dream team model. So, early career investigator awards, those early career investigators usually come from or related to a larger scale team in some way. And it gives them the funding for an early career investigator gives them more opportunity and more boost to collaborate within their team.
yeah. The the fact that your organization thinks about like how to bring people together is so huge. I think that's incredible. That's one of the things I did find interesting when looking at your group when I was first getting involved. That it's really about getting those researchers together, getting those teams together, and like you said, it takes so much to tackle cancer is incredibly complicated. It's a huge problem, and the only way we can really figure it out and think about it and come to these solutions is when we bring all these different teams together or connect them in different ways. I think that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Thank you. I
um
have a really good example of
oh
what we're
I
doing with that now.
Yeah, I would love to hear it. Yeah.
So when we are starting to think about a new program, we sometimes and now very frequently hold what we call an innovation summit.
Mm,
And we've started doing this in conjunction with our scientific summits that we hold annually. This past year, we had two smaller family foundations come to us asking that we engage in the glioblastoma space. And for glioblastoma, there has been progress.
mm,
Still, though, a lot of patients see a typical survival rate of 6 months to 12 years for high grade gliomas. And they also have a difficult quality of life during that period. And so we really want to see more progress for that type of situation. So when the family foundations came to us, we decided to hold an innovation summit. We brought together 150 people in the room at our conference in January, and these were people who have some of they're known for being some of the most innovative in approaching this cancer. Some worked together, some didn't know one another at all. And that's part of what's special about Stand Up to Cancer. We think about all the different disciplines that could come together to solve the problem. So
mm,
the people in the clinic know what they're seeing with the patients. They know there's a problem there, but they not may not have a lab and be the ones to resolve that problem. And for some of the cancers, some of the issues are biological or structural issues. So they're an engineering issue.
mhm.
The other piece is data, because some of the cancers, some would argue all of them in their own type, are rare.
Yeah.
So with the number of patients who are diagnosed with the specific cancer, and then knowing that their survival rate is low, we're not going to have a lot of data
Yeah.
from that cancer type. And so it becomes crucial for the clinicians and researchers to come together to share their data. And so all of these are areas where we're working in the malignant glioma space. The other place where it's really exciting for the collaborations to happen, so not only with the clinicians and the researchers, is with the organizations that
Mhm.
support patients, the organizations that fund research. Because when we come together with our funds, we have the opportunity to fund larger scale work. And that gives the opportunity for higher level breakthroughs, thinking that when we work together, we have greater impact.
That's that's incredible, and thank you for that example. I always have wondered like how some of these rarer cases, these rarer cancers, how progress can be made, and the fact that you use this example to say we wanted to get those people together, talking about it, connecting, uh, and yeah, I do feel like, and you said it's crucial, right? It's especially when it's harder to look at examples of what's happening to people, right? So
Yes,
like every case is more precious in that point in terms of being able to take that data and share it across the people that need it and need to
that's
work
right.
with it. I really love that. I think, and I think that is a great, like, that story is a great example of like how the work that you do affects those patients, uh especially in those rare cases, those rare cancers. uh and I think that's incredible. Are talking about, the different breakthroughs, or just even the different groups that you look at or put together. Are there any particular uh research, like, programs in specific that you are excited about personally?
I'm really excited about that glioblastoma one.
Mm,
I'm also excited about the fact that we came together just recently with
mm-hmm,
the Pediatric Neuro-Oncology Consortium towards funding another brain cancer. And diffuse midline glioma. It's also a high grade glioma, and it will fit into the portfolio with malignant gliomas. We're planning to put together a framework where any of the grants that are in brain cancers,
Mm,
those researchers will collaborate with one another. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about multiple of our teams that are working towards additional work from projects we've funded, and they were such good stewards of the money and they made such good progress with their work
mhm,
that we're interested in continuing to support them. And one of them that we have recently funded, we've doubled their amount of funding, is one looking at um, gastric cancers
mm,
and early interception of gastric cancers. And what this team has been doing is looking at a liquid panel, liquid biopsy,
mhm.
for how to identify gastric cancers, who needs to have endoscopies. Because right now, endoscopies, you go in, you have to be under anesthesia to
Yeah.
do this. And sometimes there are complications. I personally had a complication from an endoscopy, and
Mm.
my best efforts, people at stand up could not hear me talk for a week and
Oh
somehow
no.
did something with my vocal cords. So,
Mhm.
there are people who go through different things, or it can be tricky to get off work to be able to go in for an endoscopy.
Yeah.
And so there's interest in a more accessible way. And so this team is starting to think about how to use a scope on a string, that you swallow the scope, it's on the string and it comes back up, and
Wow.
you don't have to go under anesthesia to have the screening that's needed. So between their liquid biopsy to help identify who the people are at highest risk, and then go for a pill scope rather than under anesthesia, gives them too more opportunity to see more patients, and it's not as difficult and stressful for the patients as going under anesthesia. So that's one I'm excited about.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Another that we have funded and that we're considering funding more is around radio pharmaceuticals. Some
Mm,
people call them theranostics. These are compounds that have both a diagnostic component and a therapy component in one.
mhm,
So it's one infusion, it can light up the cancer in the body, but it also can be used to treat.
mm,
And so it's a unique compound that is a different way of thinking about treatment. It's complicated because it's a radiotherapy, and so the
right.
specialized spaces are needed for that type of therapy. And so the FDA has recently changed their guideline on how they handle radiotherapies. There, for some of them, it had been only one dose could be given, and now they're given the opportunity for more dosing. So we've already funded this researcher on work for one dose, and we see exciting results, and this is in pancreas cancer. And so we have an opportunity to fund that program for multiple doses then, to see if the patient receives multiple cycles, is the impact better for those patients than a single dose.
Mm.
So that's exciting as well.
That's great. I love to hear how, like, and actually Jake in the chat has actually said my very thought. It's amazing to hear how, like, where, you know, we help fundraise to help you at Stand Up to Cancer. It's incredible to hear the impact that it's making through the research that you are helping with, right? And I
Yeah.
just it it really resonates with me, and I appreciate all these stories and these examples too, because it allows me to better speak to the work. And yeah, I know that there's so many different areas of research happening simultaneously, and it's great to hear these examples. So thank you for sharing those. um with talking about the these various areas that you're looking at, the groups that and the work that they're doing. We talked about the last 10 years a little bit. We touched on that. what about the next 10 years? What do you hope what do you hope for these researchers or these teams, or what do you think cancer treatment might look like in that time?
What I'm seeing from researchers, but also from hearing from patients, is that the paradigm is coming more and more towards figuring out what your tumor is, what your genetics are, and personalizing your treatment so that the individual has better outcomes. So that's one. And that's for any stage cancer diagnosed is know your family history so that you know what to talk about with your doctor, know about your genetics and know about your tumor. So what are biomarkers going on with your tumor
Mhm,
before treatment decisions are known? I think we're going to start to see more of that. I know it's happening for many breast cancer patients and others. I know it's tricky. Some states fund that genetic testing, both for the individual and also for the tumor. Some states fund it, some states don't. And so it can be tricky with your insurance
mhm,
on what is paid and what's not. So access is one thing I think is going to improve over the next 10 years. I think there's going to be an understanding that patients need that information and doctors need that information before a personalized treatment plan can be made.
mhm,
And then I think from there, we're going to become better at early detection, both in the recurrent space and in the primary tumor space, so that we start preventing and we are also able to address the cancers earlier. I think there's going to come a point that we start to think about pre-malignancy
mm,
and we think about how to reverse a pre-malignancy rather than the cancer developing. So if we have an idea, I go into my doctor's appointment and they say, we believe you have high potential for, name it, cancer. And there are some tips and tools on how we can reverse that, whether that's some drug intervention or if it's some nutritional intervention or what have you, to know that that is likely going to turn into a cancer and there's some options on how to reverse that. I think people would really like to hear that.
yeah.
And so I think we're going to go more into that space of thinking about pre-malignancy.
That's very interesting, and that along with you talking about, again, early detection, which always is important, continuing to make progress there. Yeah, that all is just it's interesting to see where, like, our heads are at in terms of the research, what we're looking to. And someone in chat was like, "Oh, this can actually be done when you're talking about looking at a individual person's,
Yeah.
history and tailoring the treatment to them." I've heard stories about this. I hear that that's what is happening in some cases these days, and you mentioned yourself like how that can be impactful. I'm really excited to see how this continued work will even make treatment better, or as well as you said, detect things earlier. That
Well, on
Yeah,
that point, let's run the exercise on breast cancer.
yeah,
Okay, let's
okay,
say that there are a variety of things that if a woman's breast has changed, she needs to talk to her doctor.
right.
If the doctor thinks there's potential for something there that needs to be checked, they send them for a diagnostic mammogram. And then from that diagnostic mammogram, if it shows a malignancy, then there's biopsy.
Hmm.
When that biopsy goes in, there's going to be several things that come back. One is going to be the hormone receptor status. There are two hormone receptors. One is estrogen, and the other is progesterone. And so you're going to have your ER and your PR status. And if they're both positive, then they call it HR, hormone receptor positive. If they're negative, then that shows negative. The other is HER2. HER2 is a protein that is on certain cells. If a person is high in HER2, they'll be positive. If they're not, it's negative. So you find out your HR and your HER2 status from the biopsy. That HR and HER2 status lets doctors know what they can target in the treatment. If all of those are negative, then that's triple negative breast cancer. And so that's a different treatment regimen. Then with the imaging and with additional imaging, usually PET and sometimes breast MRI, more information is compiled to let doctors know more about the treatment plan. For
Mhm.
instance, if the tumor is over a certain size, they have a really good idea that the patient's going to need to consider mastectomy. If it's under the certain size, then they could consider lumpectomy
Mhm.
or a different option. So the other piece is about the individual's genetics, not only knowing about the tumor from the biopsy, but running the genetics on the person. And that helps doctors know as well what are they dealing with that could impact treatment. So they may need a different treatment option. But it also lets that woman's family know, if she's willing to share, if they have the potential for genetic risk factors
Right.
that may have been passed genetically to children. And so all of this becomes very important because then the treatment plan is specifically designed for that woman. And it's based off of clinical trials that have been run. And so, the goal is to have the individual with the treatment that has the best option for curative impact and also for decreasing a recurrence. And that all goes into consideration. So I would really love to see women going to their doctor when they see a difference, not only necessarily at their screening mammogram annually, but also in between if they see something that's concerning, then them having the support system to have any other diagnostics that are needed and that to happen in a reasonable timeline, and then be able to have all of the genetic testing done on them as the individual and also on their tumor, and then to move into a treatment that has the best chance of working well from them.
Mhm.
Over time, I'd like to see us too develop less toxic treatments. That's one thing most of our RFAs, our requests for applications, say. We want to see less toxic treatments, and that's from the early to the elderly, because
Right.
when the treatment's debilitating, it can strain not only the patient, the caregiver, the family, the entire system. And so it's important for us to understand that toxicity and how that impacts patient life as well.
Yeah.
So that's an example with walking through a path of breast cancer, some of where researchers are and some of where we're thinking and would like to be.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that example. Like, thank you for that, like, walkthrough. That really makes it clear. I have a few comments in the chat that have said that really helps us and our understanding of how you look at something like breast cancer and how it is actually uh like how you look at it from each different angle, because there's so many factors that impact how a person's treatment can be shaped. And so
Yes.
that's fantastic. And that really, I think, makes it much much more clear for some of us who aren't as familiar with how a doctor would maybe look at their patient and work with them on coming up with a treatment that actually can kind of maximize the work that can be done to make them, to heal them. So
Yes.
fantastic. Um, what I have one personal follow-up question in general with the work that you do, in terms of like what keeps you motivated when the work just seems maybe overwhelming or difficult or just huge. How do you keep yourself motivated?
So I will say my first year at stand up was very emotionally draining.
Yes.
And the reason early on that year, we were working on one of the programs I had been hired to handle, and one of the projects happened to be in pediatric cancer.
Mm,
And the researchers put up a slide that said um, that it alluded to the concept that for many pediatric patients, if they have a recurrence, it can be end of life for that patient. And so it caused me to think back to when I was in kindergarten and first grade, and one of our classmates had leukemia. And we all rallied around her. Were worried about her, what was going on with her. She was at MCV while we were on the playground, and it was very concerning. And then it was the same thing. If she had a recurrence, she probably wouldn't live. And so it caused me to think, okay, this is nearly 40 years that nothing's changed.
hmm
And so that is what keeps me going. We can't go another 40 years if there's no change. And we need people to bring people together to figure out how to make things better for kids, for adults, for everybody dealing with this disease, because it can be absolutely devastating to individual, family, friends. And so that piece of really wanting there to be high impact change
hmm
is what keeps me going.
Thank you for sharing that. I love to find out, how I think many of us have our reasons when I speak for like the people on the team that do the fundraising. Uh, Myself and the coordinators, we talk about like what keeps us pushing to like organize all these people to help you
Yeah.
all do what you do. And so thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate. And yeah, it's always yeah, I think many of us have those stories where we think back to uh someone we're close to or someone we know, and we're all impacted
Yes.
in some way. So thank you for sharing that. Um Couple more follow-ups. This is one that I think is fairly important, at least for us creators who help you do what you do with our fundraising. Is uh, if someone watching is thinking like, how does my $20 make a difference? How does that how far does that take this, or how does it help? What would you say to them?
Sure. So this year with the builders, we are moving the funds into what we call our SU2C Maverick Award.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to explain how that started and where we are with it.
Great.
And especially one of the projects we have funded, and the one we're most recently funding. So the Maverick Award came up several years ago when we had our scientific summit in San Diego. We had previously had two iterations of early career investigator awards. One we called the Golden Arrow. We literally passed out a chocolate bar to every person at our scientific summit. Five of them had an arrow, and those five were able to either, if they were an early career investigator, they could use their arrow. If they weren't, they pass it to their favorite early career investigator. So we had five applications come in for the Golden Arrow Award.
Mm-hmm.
We had a recipient that year, and a great program. The next year, we had a different iteration of it. We called that one Sharp Tank. And so
Mm,
at our scientific summit, well, before our scientific summit, we had early career investigators submit a video of a pitch like they were in the Shark Tank.
right.
We call it the Sharp Tank because the leader of our scientific advisory committee at the time was is his name is Philip Sharp. And so we called it the Sharp
I
Tank.
love that.
And so we had a recipient out of that program who was connected with one of our dream teams. Then, when we went to San Diego for our scientific summit, I wanted some connection. You know, both of those previous ones, first it was a Willy Wonka theme, then it was a TV show theme. I wanted some sort of connection with San Diego. Remember, the Top Gun had been filmed there in
Hmm.
some part, and I thought, okay, let's try Maverick Award. So we really do a big splash with it in our meeting. The Top Gun music starts blaring, and then a researcher comes to the podium and talks about the people who are the finalists, and they do 5-minute pitches. Now, the way we find the finalists is through the poster award session the night before.
Mm.
So early career investigators who have put forward a poster through the poster session, they're all reviewed during that poster session. So we have people from our SAC, our Health Disparities Committee, others look at those posters, judge them, give us scores. And the top ranked researchers, early career investigator researchers from those posters, are asked the next day would they give a 5-minute talk about their research. And so we have 3 to 4 usually who get up and speak at the podium. And then we do a People's Choice Award. They've already been reviewed by experts, they've come to the top.
Hmm.
And so, whichever one the audience says, that's really great, and we want to see that research done, that's the one that's a recipient. And one of them was he ended up developing a um, 3D printed microscope that can fit in a, you know, it can fit in your carry on,
Mm.
so it could go to any country you wanted it to go to. And it gave him the ability to early detect head and neck cancers from a swab.
Wow, that's incredible.
Another, a recent one, there is a therapy called CAR T, and there are researchers interested in making that CAR T therapy more effective. And so, in understanding T cells. And so she has developed a program that is using some unique assays to figure out why sometimes T cells work really well and why sometimes they're what we call exhausted.
Mm.
And so then the immune system doesn't work as well. So that's another exciting program coming up. And so this year we'll do the same. We'll announce in advance we have $100,000 available thanks to you all. Those researchers, the early career people, will put forward their poster. They'll present their poster one night. The researchers who are reviewing will come in and give their scores. That night, we'll figure out who the top ones are. And the next day, they'll speak in the session. And by the end of that day, we know who the award recipient is. And so it's a fun way to connect, to give those early career investigators a platform that they wouldn't have had otherwise, and to give them funds to be able to extend their work in really exciting ways.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And thank you for sharing like the whole story of the Maverick Award and then what it actually means to do it. And for those watching, this team has funded that. We raised $100,000 to go towards the Maverick Award. We did it in 5 days. And Cathy, I'm so glad that we have a part in that to help allow you to enable you all to do this. So thank you for thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that we can do something to help. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh man. That gives me a great feeling. I'm sorry. I just need a I need a second. I love that. I love that.
Well, it's really great to help support these early career investigators,
Hmm.
especially with the way the funding climate is currently. It gives them this boost, it gives them this recognition. We hear it from all of the Stand Up to Cancer researchers when they're funded. It gives them a boost within their organization when they see they received a Stand Up to Cancer grant.
Hmm.
And so it's really exciting for these early career investigators. We have a program that that we fund periodically called innovative research grants that are for early career investigators. And we ended up funding probably 50 to 60 across the years so far. Most of them come back and say, stand up made my career.
Wow.
I would not be where I am had it not been for the funding from Stand Up to Cancer. And so it's really exciting to see the impact that can be made for the researchers, because then that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah.
When they're developed early and they can keep going into careers that are high impact for patients, it helps a lot of people.
Yeah. That the amount of I think the impact any person can make with their research, I think is often, I would say, understated. You know, it's just incredible to see, just from sitting down with you for this hour has really helped me better understand the work that you all do, that the researchers are able to get done, and those breakthroughs over time they've helped people in ways that I think is just so amazing, right? And the fact
Yes.
that you all continue to do this every day, and you're continuing to work with some great people in science making these things happen is just it's incredible. um we're getting close to wrapping up, and I before we do, I just want to get ahead of the end here and say thank you so much for your stories. Thank you so much for all this wonderful knowledge and information about the work that Stand Up to Cancer does. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this, so thank you.
Well, I have been extremely grateful to be part of Stand Up Too. And the only way we're able to do the work we do is because of people like you and the other builders and the people who are watching, helping us with donating and keeping the science going. And so I'm extraordinarily grateful to you as well and for your leadership in this space.
Thank you. As we wrap up, and I know you just said some amazing things. Were there any final thoughts, any final things you want to say or share with anyone watching this video today, or may catch the video later? Anything you'd like to say?
Do your screenings, check your body. If there's something that seems off, tell your doctor. Catch it early if it's going to be there. Um, and that's what I want. I have friends who've caught it early, and it's great. I have friends who didn't, and I miss them.
Mm,
So please know yourself, check yourself, and help your doctors help you.